Okay, it's 4 p.m. We're gonna call the meeting of the Board of Health on Wednesday, March 27th to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote means and in person, as long as members of the public can easily access the proceedings in real time and participate remotely. Until further notice, this meeting will no longer be broadcast live, but it may be watched when the show is replayed on pactv.org. I believe it's now only on YouTube. As a matter of fact. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner. In person at the Rope Walk Meeting Room located on the second floor in Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, Mass. Note that the occupancy limit of the room may reduce the number of attendees that can be accommodated. By remote access, join the Zoom meeting using the link that's provided on the agenda. You may also send any comment or questions that pertains to a current agenda item to publichealth@plymouth-ma.gov. They will be read on the air and answered by the Board of Health as practicable. If time doesn't permit answers during the meeting, responses will be sent by email as soon as possible. So our first item of business was to be the approval of minutes from the last meeting on the 13th, right? Did you receive them? I did not either.
No, okay.
David and Lorenzo, did you see the minutes from the last meeting?
I don't recall, but I checked my email.
No worries, just move on. Two of you didn't see him anyway, so it's irrelevant. Can't do anything about
Okay, we'll take care of that at the next meeting.
it.
Next item of business is the grease trap variance over wine bar. Katie, could you join us up here so we can get you on the screen? Hi. Well, we got information about it.
Yes.
But is there anything you'd like to add to the information that you already sent in?
I'm just happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with, the current setup. The grease trap's been in place for 5 years. We opened June 5 years ago. To date, we have, never had an issue with our grease trap, backing up or, any other issues with it. And we have a service contract with Wind River who comes to us regularly. And, there's very little, we don't have a full kitchen. I don't know if anybody's been in, back, so is Karen, but, we don't have fryolators, we don't have ovens except for a small convection vent oven that we just cook our flatbreads on. So there's very little waste generally, fairly efficient, with very little grease. There's very little food waste as well. So when our staff are clearing plates to go into our ware washer that we have, everything is cleaned completely off of the plates, and rinsed accordingly and put into the dishwasher. So I'm happy to adjust what we have, but we would greatly appreciate your consideration of keeping the current grease trap in place and, if you need us to, change our current protocols, happy to, talk about any particular things that you have concerns about. And we're happy to adjust accordingly. But as far as I'm aware, we've never had an issue with the current setup as far as any, excessive grease that's gone into the system.
Well, thank you. Margaret or Karen, I guess you did an inspection over there, right?
Yeah, I actually went over with Kendra, who is from engineering. We, took a look at her whole operation, went through all the processes that they employ to make sure they keep as much grease as possible out of the system. They do a great job with it. This is one where engineering, sewer, plumbing, and health division were all on board with it. We all agreed that a variance would be appropriate in this case.
Okay, thank you, Margaret.
I
Yes.
just have a question,
Sure.
because You've been in the operation for 5 years. What brought this up?
Well, don't forget with the renewals, we told everyone they had to have either a 2,000.
That's.
So so Uber's actually asking for a variance to the new requirement.
Yeah, to the new requirement.
I just wondered.
Mhm,
So you met the initial requirement, just not the new ones.
Correct.
mhm.
Okay, Lorenzo, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. In the package, this variance would be for if there's any changes to the menu, right?
Mhm.
It would be relooked at. The variance would be rescinded. Is that the idea?
It would be
or how-
reviewed. Any
It would be
change to the
reviewed.
menu would require a review again from the department and be brought before the board again.
Okay.
Okay. From a protocol standpoint, Katie, thank you for coming in front of the board.
It's
You
Michelle.
mentioned, oh, Michelle, thank you.
Katie's not here, sorry.
Michelle,
I
why don't
thought
you
it was Katie.
state your whole name too for the record, if you could, just,
Yeah.
So it's Michelle Manware, co-owner of Uva Wine Bar.
okay, great, thanks.
From a protocol standpoint, you mentioned that they scrape the plates before going. Is there any signage around where they do that? And is it the same place they would scrape? There's not multiple places.
There's one location in the kitchen. It's a relatively small kitchen. There's a garbage, our 3-bay sink, our garbage and the ware washer are all in the same, within 2 feet.
Okay.
So essentially the protocol is to scrape everything off of the plates into the garbage and then rinse off any residue and then place it into the ware washer.
Would you be amicable to putting up a sign around the sink or before it places that reminding folks to scrape off the plates?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously inclusive minded. So if you have folks that are non-English speaking, it would be in the appropriate language.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. No further
welcome.
questions.
Okay, David, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I assume that your employees are fairly long-standing employees, there's no one new.
There's nobody new. We haven't needed to hire in over 2 years. Very thankfully and gratefully.
Noticed last time we were in there, it was really busy and people were running around like crazy in there.
Yeah, it can get that way.
Okay, if there's no further questions by anyone, then we just need a member of the board to make a motion. You move to grant the variance request for the beach trap. Okay, is there a second?
There's a second.
I think that was.
Lorenzo.
Okay, now I'll just call the roll unless there's further discussion. I don't imagine there is. Oh, Deb, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I had a
or-
question, but it was answered. Thank you.
Okay. Your picture just popped up on the screen. Okay, so I'll just call the roll. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
Deb, yes or no?
Yes.
See, David, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Myself, yes, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
They all should be so easy.
When time flies, I can't believe it's been 5 years. I wish I had met-
Well, do we have an order of people that are appealing the tobacco violations?
Richard's Wine and Spirits. Richard's Wine and Spirits, do you want to come up to the table? And when you get here, just state your full name if you could for the record. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Berg. I'm the owner of Richard's Wine and Spirits.
Mhm.
That we've been there for, am I just supposed to? We've been there for 25 years. I mean, I think in that time frame, we haven't been in front of the board. Maybe one other time, paid our fine. got hit this last time. I think it was the Monday of February vacation. I'd like to think it was someone else, but I mean, it was 11:30, 12ish in the morning, so I mean, unfortunately, it was me. Not making excuses, a little busy during the day. This time of year, I don't have anybody else coming until 12 o'clock. Putting away some beer, I guess a gentleman or a female came in, I'm not really 100% sure, and they bought a $2.50 cigar. You know, we do have the we card information on the door, we have it on the counter. There's a self-made sign that we made, make sure we're checking IDs, because it's the same age now for both tobacco and liquor. Since then, my daughter has gone on, she found this is the FDA website, and we have a computerized digital clock stating the date you have to be older to this date, you know, to be legally able to purchase the products. The guys are real diligent. I mean, like I said, we've been there for 25 years, and hopefully, you know, the record speaks for itself. We got fined the first time, paid my fine the second time, very promptly. You know, getting hit with a 2-week suspension. In my mind, I'd like it to be nothing. Obviously, the board has to do what it has to do, but I hopefully consider some leniency and take, you know, my track record into consideration.
Thank you. This is a first or second? violation?
Second, the
Second
first
within
was,
36 months,
yeah, the first was in 2022.
okay. David, do you have any questions?
No questions from me, Barry. Thank you.
Okay, Lorenzo, any questions?
No, very, but just some follow-up on this is the second violation, and the first one was in 2022. What month?
October 6th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. No further
Welcome.
questions.
Deb, any questions?
Yeah, he said you've put in something now that will flag up the dates easier.
I mean, we have plenty of recard stuff throughout the store. Like I said, something on the register, just making sure we check IDs. We have the recard calendar daily, you know, you take that off, but my daughter has, you know, since gone onto a website, and I have it's about 8 inches by 6 inches. Very clearly, it's on top of the lottery machine, specifying the date that the particular person has to be to either buy, you know, where it's now the same age, either the alcohol or the tobacco, and it's very visible, you know, it's very visible. It's kind of
And
right.
that's new since the incident.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Reed?
And, just a clarification on the state law. The state law only requires,
Okay, the state law for a second violation within 36 months requires, I believe, a $2,000 fine, which we have no power to change.
I represent.
And it states that boards of health may, not shall, it's may suspend the sales permit license for at least 1 day and up to 7. Our regulation states that for the first violation, there is a 7-day suspension. For the second violation, there is a 14-day suspension. It's consecutive business days. So those are the regulations at the moment. I'm ready.
The first one is the state and the second one is yours, is that right?
The fines of the state.
Okay.
And in
The 1 day.
the wording for the fine says shall pay. Okay. So that means that the state has preempted local authority. For the suspension of sales permits, which can vary, it says may. But we also have our own local Plymouth regulations. And we have very specific days of length of sales suspensions, depending upon what's the first, second, or third violation within 36 months. The state rules also can be made even more severe by boards of health, but cannot be reduced. So in other words, if the Board of Health here just said, $2,000 isn't enough, we're gonna fine you $5,000, we have the authority to do that. I don't think we would, but it's possible. cannot reduce it below whatever the state sets. Okay? I think I'm right.
You want,
I've read those regulations about 50 times.
yep.
So if there's no further questions, I turn it over to the board members. You may either guess you can make a motion to uphold the penalties in the local regulation, which would mean a 14 days suspension of sales permits, and it would be consecutive business days, or you can make a motion to reduce it. Would anyone care to make a motion? If no one makes a motion, then that is in effect stating that the rules that we have put in to the local regulation will be enforced.
So that would mean he would have his license suspended for 14 days?
14 consecutive business days if no one makes a motion, because those are the regulations that are currently enforced. Board members can reduce it if they wish, or they could increase it if they wish.
Well, I would like to make a motion to decrease the amount of days on suspension.
Could you state a specific number of days?
5.
Okay, you can make that motion, but that is even less than with the first violation. The
Well,
first
did you
violation,
say 14 days is what he was going to be suspended?
yes, for a first violation, it's 7 days, for a second violation, it's 14. You still want to maintain the 5-day suspension? We'll go ahead and see if it's seconded.
Can we, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can we, if Deb makes the motion to reduce it, can we discuss the number of days?
Um,
Yes, absolutely.
yes,
Yeah.
but that has to wait until the motion is seconded.
Yep,
So Deb, is your
So-
motion to reduce the number of days?
That this license gets suspended?
Yes.
Because he did put things in place to avert this from happening again. Yes, so
And I'd like to discuss it after you make your motion and if it's seconded.
Okay, so your motion is just to reduce the suspension length,
Correct.
and we'll discuss the length.
yes, okay.
Okay. Is
Motion
there a
to-
second for that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, now it's open to discussion. And I guess the discussion has to center around how long should the suspension be? Apparently, it's going to be less than 14.
So just for clarity's sake, these are these newer regulations, the local ones, and when were they inputted? We went through that process, right?
Yes,
And
we did.
we updated the violations and, first violation, here's the penalties, second violation, et cetera, et cetera. Do we
I
know
believe it
when?
was in 2023. I don't remember the exact month.
2023.
Okay, so they're
So it's
relatively new.
relatively recent.
yes,
Okay. And then the first violation was on the second, was on the previous set of regulations. And in the previous set of regulations, did the vendor get their license on a first violation? Does anyone remember that?
Well, I think if it was 2022, that may have been even before the state
yeah,
changed the fines.
right. And the first violation, no, there would not be a suspension.
There would not be. That's
In the
what-
old,
in the old.
in the old,
And that's my recollection as well. I don't have the paperwork in front of me.
Yeah.
So to jump, I see where Deb is going with to jump from 0 to 14 days. I agree that it should be somewhere between 0 and 14. Where we land is, based on the new regulations, that's 7 days for the first violation. So maybe it's somewhere, closer to 7 and less than 14. But I'd like to hear what my colleague David Golden has to say as well.
Mhm. David?
Thanks, Barry. I will say, I'm generally in favor of economic development and business operations here in town. I am, however, pretty strongly on the record that we should be stringent when there are multiple violations from the same vendor. And so, although I am sympathetic to this situation, given that there are extenuating circumstances, I'm not certain that it's in this board's interest to be lenient here.
Okay, thank you. Deb, do you have an opinion about the length of the suspension?
Well, I didn't think it should be 14. Um,
I gathered that Lorenzo felt 7 was probably
Yeah.
more appropriate.
then I agree with 7 as
7.
opposed to 14.
Okay. Dr. Reed,
So,
you agree with 7 also? Okay. And I side with David. We don't want to set a precedent, as far as I'm concerned, and that would just, cause a lot more trouble, and I would prefer to keep it at 14. But the motion is made and seconded, and apparently it is for a 7-day suspension. So I will now call for a vote.
Barry, if I could.
Go ahead, David.
I would also, remind our colleagues that just in our last meeting, we had first violations that received a 7-day suspension. So I'm concerned about a lack of consistency on the board's part if we're gonna apply a 7-day suspension to a first violation and a second violation. It feels like we're watering down the very regulations that we enacted, this exact board enacted recently.
Thank you, David. Given the discussion, given that, is there any further discussion about the length of the suspension?
So I just want to be clear on the first offense, he stopped having to sell cigarettes for 7 days.
No,
No.
the first offense happened in 2022. We followed the guidelines as they were in 2022, which was a fine, but did not result in any suspension of a license.
Okay,
So that's why we're jumping from 0 to 14, because the board enacted new regulations in 2023 that included suspensions right from the beginning with your first violation.
but he paid fines both times.
He did.
Okay,
Although the first fine was a lot less than it is now.
yeah.
Yeah, and he paid this fine too, right away, so.
Okay, so
Okay.
in my opinion, after listening to the rest of the discussion, I would be okay with changing the length of the suspension, but it must be more than 7 days and less than 14.
Mhm.
Lorenzo thinks so.
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Yeah, just when we changed the regulations and made them more stringent and implemented them in 2023, what kind of, did we as a board and department send out notices to existing current tobacco sales licensee holders?
Yes,
Okay, so that this vendor was well aware of the changes.
yes. Well, I can't speak if the
Right.
vendor was aware or not, but I can say that the changes were sent to all tobacco vendors.
Correct. Okay, thank you. I
Okay.
I agree with the chair, Barry. It's somewhere now between, no less than 7 and less than 14, or as up to 14. And so what's the date? What would you be, in discussion, Barry? What do you think? 10, 11?
Yeah, I would say somewhere in between the two. Usually when there's a disagreement, we try to find middle ground.
Yeah.
In everything we do. So, I would suggest 10 or 11. It's up to the board members. Does anyone have a preference?
I said 10.
Dr. Reed suggests 10. Lorenzo?
I would support that.
Okay. David?
I would not support it, but the board is, it's the board's pleasure, obviously.
Okay. Deb,
I would support Tim.
okay, in that case, I'll ask for a motion to be made by a member of the board in observance of what has already been discussed, that the suspension of the tobacco sales permit be for 10 consecutive business days.
Could I just jump in through the board if I could? Since there's already a motion on the floor from Deb, it would be best if Deb actually amended her current motion from 7 to 10.
Well, she changed her motion to state that she was asking for a reduction in the suspension limit.
But when you went around, you asked everyone about 7, so 7 has definitely been mentioned, so I think it's
Okay.
important.
Okay. Well, if David was here, I'm sure he probably would agree.
I think it's just important.
Okay,
that
so I will make the
I agree
motion.
with Karen.
Go ahead,
I will
make the
make the
motion.
motion to suspend for 10 days.
Okay,
I
Is there a
think, I
second?
think I think you're amending your motion, Deb.
Yeah,
Oh,
amending it, yep,
okay.
okay, perfect.
Is there a second to Deb's amended motion?
I think you would
Seconded.
ask Lorenzo, I think you would ask Lorenzo to maintain his second, Barry.
I
Yep,
will,
so-
yeah, I'll maintain the second. Thank you, Jim. David.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I think I can then call the poll.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
Yes,
motion,
you can.
the motion before the board is to impose a suspension of the tobacco sales permit for 10 consecutive business days in this particular case. All those in favor, well, I have to do it by roll call. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes,
Deb, yes or no?
Yes,
David, yes or no?
No,
Dr. Reed?
Yeah.
Myself? Yes. Only because I understand you're under different rules when the first violation occurred. If this was a second violation after the new rules had gone into effect, then it would be a different story. Okay? So you will have to follow the instructions of the department about exactly when you're going to do the sales suspension for 10 days. It has to be consecutive days. of sales.
See Karen about that, or?
You can send me an email, or you can come to the office again, we can do it in writing, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Any
just-
day or?
I'm asking
You
within
can call.
30 days from today, you have to do it within 30 days from today.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That took a little longer, but maybe the next ones will be quicker.
So, next is Piape's Package Store.
Is this a first or second violation?
This is second, but we cannot have the hearing unless we have a $2,000 check.
I mailed it to you.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Okay, we did not get it, but I'll make a note. Okay.
Definitely has been.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make
I
a
mailed to you
note.
that day you emailed me, it went out that same day, because I asked you if I should bring it by
Yeah.
or mail it, and you
That's
said
okay.
mail it.
We'll check. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, I just have a little handout here I'd like to present to you all before it's passed.
Thank you.
Peter Belmonte, owner of Yockey's Package Store.
Before you started, when was the date of the first violation?
Okay, so, Piape's, this is their second violation. The first was October 6th, 2022. And the second one was February 19th, 2024.
Go ahead, thank you.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm here before you again for the second time within 93 years of business here in Plymouth for a tobacco sale violation. I acknowledge my clerk clearly broke the law by completing this transaction, and I have paid the fine of $2,000. However, I also want to make it clear to the town and this board that we're not serving tobacco to the children of Plymouth. This customer was a 19-year-old adult wearing a construction outfit with full facial hair, as you can see in picture 1 of your handouts. Still, he was underage, and that is our responsibility to check. In the same picture, you can see the female clerk IDing her customer at the same moment. We take these matters very seriously. We require all our clerks to complete an online certified training course in addition to our in-store training program. Our store policy at the time was to ID anyone that looked under 30 years of age, and we also required them to run it through the ID scanner to make sure that it was a valid ID. Unfortunately, even with those policies in place, training, technology, and this particular clerk this day sold a cigar to a person without asking an ID. Because the customer looked under 30, in my view, which is a direct violation of our store policy, that employee was terminated immediately after notification of the violation. As mentioned, I take these matters very seriously. You can ask anyone in town who has some of the strictest ID policies, and PRPs will come to the top of the list. After this incident, we've made some big investments on state-of-the-art upgrade ID scanner, a counter display, software package. This ID scanner is prominently displayed on the counter so that not only are the clerks reminded to use it on every transaction, but the customers see it. And they can tell their friends, don't go to PRPs, they're checking everybody. I put additional signage on the counter, the shelving where the cigarettes are, so that it reminds the clerks once again, when they turn around and they look at the cigarettes or the cigars, that they're gonna, another check. Then when they ring it in, I put a prompt in the register, a new prompt, that's bigger, larger, more bold, to tell them, ID the person. We've changed our store policies, and we've upgraded the age where that we require all our clerks, instead of 30 to 45. I'd love to see the state make a policy where you could ID everybody. That would be great. That'd solve a lot of problems. We've also hired a private company to do random compliance checks. I put a big investment in this, and I don't like being in this position, as you can see. In closing, I'm serious about compliance. I'm here before you to ask you for leniency. I've made a very big investment to change things. I've paid the fine, and I ask you to waive the 2 weeks of closure for the tobacco license. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
As you know, the motivation is that we're doing everything we can to keep our young people from becoming addicted to nicotine,
Absolutely.
which is a huge problem in this state. There's an awful lot of violations of underage sales that are going on, not just in Plymouth, but all over the state. And there's a federal grant program that could be suspended if we can't get the violations much lower. So that's one of the reasons, obviously, we have to do this. So given that, does any member of the board have any questions? Lorenzo?
No questions, just a comment. Thank you for coming to the board, and you know, I hear your investments in the ID scanner and additional signage, random compliance checks. So your level of seriousness is taken to heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. David?
I don't have any questions for Mr. Balboni. I will say it's impressive the measures he's taken. I think I don't think we've seen someone create such a large investment in amending their errors. I will say that I think that although I oppose any watering down of our policies, I think the board should apply the same principle in this case as they did in the last.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree with David.
Dr. Reed?
I have no question.
Hmm?
I have no question.
No questions? I think it's clear to me that we could either be consistent with the last case and impose a 10-day suspension of sales permit, but you've made a tremendously expensive addition to try to make things more secure. And even more so, you've apparently removed the person who was guilty of not checking the IDs in this case. So to me, that would probably, again, I think we have to maintain something that's more than a first violation, but we certainly don't have to go to 14. And in this particular case, I think I would personally support something between 7 and 9. day suspension. Or it has to be 8, I guess there have to be 8 or
8,
9, because we don't want it the same as the first violation.
Right.
But that's just my individual opinion. I'll ask, I guess, if anyone wants to make a motion, and then we can discuss further if necessary. Would anyone care to make a motion in this case?
I'll make a motion for 8.
Okay, motions are made for an 8-day suspension of license. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think that was Deb.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion about the length of this suspension, which is what we're debating now? Hearing none, I'll call the roll for the board members. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
Deb, yes or no?
Yes.
David, yes or no?
No.
Dr. Reed, yes or no?
Yes,
Myself, yes. I think that's about as fair as we could possibly be under the circumstances.
Thank you very much, board.
So Peter, same thing as last person,
Yeah,
just send an email to me with the 8 dates that you'll not be selling
will do.
between now and 30 days from now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next,
Okay, next on the list. Minimet General Store.
is this a first or a second?
Minimet General Store is the second,
And the date of the first?
11/1/23.
So the first was November of last year,
Mhm,
and the second was
February.
February of this year.
Mhm.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mutsu Chaudhary, and I have here Zuhair Shah. We both from that general store. So I'm sorry, one of my employee. That incident happened with her. And the first violation was just, it was just a little confusion between cigars, green and green sweet. We didn't know there was, one was flavor, one wasn't. So it wasn't like, it just, second, she did the drink check ID or some. So what we did, now we adding up scanner and plus one more device to our register. Every single sale of restricted items, message will pop up on the screen, check ID. So this is what we can do, and the reason why we are here, if you'll be able to, plus we add up the ID scanner too, so now we register that for the order already. And so if you'll be able to reduce our suspension days. So will be, will be very helpful for us. And because our sales are more than 50% on cigarettes. So that way we'll be able to pay our bills on time and stuff if a few days if we'll be able to reduce from our suspension.
Yeah. I'll ask the board members if they have questions for you. Lorenzo, do you have any questions?
So and I apologize for being redundant, but the first violation was a November 1st, 2023. So that was under the new regulations, correct?
Correct, but it was not for selling underage.
What was the violation?
Cigar sales that were supposed to be regulated and sale of flavored tobacco products. So it's not underage.
Okay, so what was the fine, and was there a suspension?
There was not a suspension. They paid a fine of $1,000.
Okay. And so this is the first violation of
For underage.
underage. Okay.
Correct.
So it would be under that regulation, first violation underage, so a fine and then 7 days suspension, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have you put anything in place to be able to flag it out to you? The age?
Yeah, we have a recall thing and plus we ordered a scanner and next week the guy is gonna put the device with our register. You'll update it, so every single sale of restricted item, there will message will show up on the screen, check ID. every single sale.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
David?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Reed?
This person who did the violation, what have you done with that person?
And she's gone, we let her go.
You no longer works, so
No,
you fired her, she just left.
she was so upset when we got the letter from the town, and she said she was our best employee, she was working with us for 4 or 5 years. So she told us she won't no longer working with us. She said she's so embarrassed, and so, you know.
Okay, so I have questions for the department.
Yes,
I believe the rules and the fines and optional suspensions are specifically for underage sales.
They
Is
are.
that correct?
they are.
Okay. And our regulations that we passed in 2023, I guess in September, as I recall, right? Were also for underage sales, or they were just for any kind of violation of tobacco sales?
The changes that you made in 2023 are for under 21.
Okay.
There's still a fine for selling, for the violation of the sale of flavored, that still exists, that's been consistent. It's, the suspension dates changed for under 21. So their first violation was for flavored tobacco.
So in terms of the new regulations,
They have only had one under
they've only had
21.
one violation. Of
Right,
underage
of
sales.
underage, correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Given that, I think that we would probably have to impose at least a 7-day suspension, because that's the penalty for a violation. It could be more, at the discretion of the board, but probably 7 would be the minimum. I don't know if anyone agrees, so we have to check for further discussion and see if someone wants to make a motion about the length of the sales permit suspension.
I agree.
You agree it should be like the first violation?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments, or would someone now like to make a motion? An agreement was not a motion, I agree.
No, I know that. Ladies and people, I believe so. Well, I will make a motion, that we treat it like a first violation with a suspension of 7 days.
Okay,
Okay.
is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Deb seconds the motion. Is there further discussion? Hearing nothing but crickets. I guess
Barry.
we move. Oh, go ahead.
So this is for a 7-day suspension?
Yes, because it's the first violation for underage sales.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, anything else? And then I'll call the roll. So the motion is to impose, in addition to the state mandated fine, a suspension of the sales permit for 7 consecutive business days. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
Deb, yes or no?
Yes.
David, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Myself, yes, it's unanimous. So the good news is it's not a 14-day suspension. The bad news is that we have to, enforce the 7-day rule for a first violation.
We understand that.
Okay. Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And again,
Yeah, you'll have
This
to let
process.
me know the 7 days that you'll stop the sales of tobacco, and it has to be within 30 days from today,
All right.
so you can email me.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final group here today is from Sunoco.
My name is Rich McCarthy.
My name is Zach Salivo.
We are the managers of the Sunoco station in Cedarville.
is
As
this
a-
first or second violation?
Sunoco, it's their second. Their first was August 10th, 22, and then February 19th, 24. I will let you know that they've already paid their fine and they have stopped sales for 7 days. Their request is to have that be that be the amount.
Okay, so both violations were with the new set of rules, or one was just?
No, just one. The 22 was not with the new set of rules, 24 was with the new set of rules. And they requested this because of the impact that they're seeing to their business. So that's why they're here today, to talk to the board about, if there's a way they could, stop the additional 7 days.
Okay.
So it's a little different.
Being a Sunoco retailer, I don't have the ability, like the other gentleman, to change the software that's in our cash register. So I can't change an alert program like that. As a Sunoco retailer, Sunoco has their own systems, which is called the bar system. So we have to abide to that. So I've been talking to my Sunoco rep about putting a scanner in, which was suggested. I didn't get a definite answer by any means if that's in the future because of what they're tied in with the bar system. The bar system comes to our station at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, especially in the summer months. Our record with them, when a client comes in that's from the bar system, you know, they'll ask for a pack of cigarettes or tobacco. And if we move or go to raise our hand to attempt to get the cigarettes without asking for an ID, we fail. At that time, we get a red card. If we get a green card, we pass and they move on and they come back the next time. So our record with that, I don't have a percentile for it. But if you were to come to the station, you'll see all the green cards on the wall behind the register. We do have the age on the register. We have it beside the cigarettes. Our cigarettes are displayed overhead. They're not, you know, on a counter or anything. All our tobacco, as far as chewing tobacco that's sold, and cigars are in the cabinet to the left of the register. So everything's concealed. I don't have the ability, like I said earlier, to get the scanner, which would be a great idea. I think it works. I think it's far the right thing for the program. We paid our fine. As of today, we have served the first week. I'm asking for leniency for the second week. And I see you revoted it and revamped this regulation a little bit in prior cases. As far as our first violation, that person doesn't work for us anymore. His name was Rafiq, and he really has left the country. We are open from 5:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, till 10 o'clock at night. On the weekends, we're open from 6 till 10. Because we're open that many hours, and on Sunday that many hours, it's very hard to find, I don't know how to say this, but above average people to work those hours, I guess is what I'm looking for. There's no one that works for me with a Harvard graduation is what I'm trying to say. And there's a lot of turnover, okay? Zach runs the store for us. And at the time of this second violation, it was right at shift change at 2:30 is when I believe that's exactly, that's when we do shift change. Zach is in the morning. We have a client, we have an employee called Glenn Cat that worked the second shift till 10 o'clock that night. So it happened, we're guilty, we admit that. But I think what might have happened is the two of them have to converse on what happened for the day and what has to be taken care of on the second shift. So something was missed there. And I'm saying that because of our record with the bar system. We have an excellent record of that. The minute that I get a red card, I have to report to Sunoco. I have to report to the owner. And then I have to figure out who did it. And there's a ton of paperwork. So we try to give an incentive to the guys to get their green cards. We've got a great employee, and this gentleman I mentioned in the second shift, Len, has been with us for about 1.5 years. And in those 16 months, he's got nothing but green cards on his shift. So I feel we're on top of it. I feel that we did make a mistake that day, but I feel we're pretty good at taking care of this. The first offense, that employee was a mess from the start, but it's all I had to work with. So I'm asking the board for leniency on the second week. We have paid our fine. We have served the first week as of today's date.
Okay, thank you. So these were both underage sale violations?
Yes,
So obviously, you know, we've made a change in one case to 8 days and another case to 10 days instead of 14 for a second violation. This is a second violation for underage sales. And in one of the other cases, it was a second violation, but it actually was only the first violation for underage sales. In another case, the first violation, as I understood it, was based on an older version of our regulation because it went back to 2022.
as is theirs,
That's the same as
Yours is
ours.
same thing, yep.
So, given all that information, which I summarized as best as I can, Lorenzo, do you have any questions for these gentlemen?
No further questions. Thank you for coming in and explaining the situation. I applaud you for the proactive 7 days of doing that before, even coming in for a hearing and asking for even further leniency. But I think you're asking for some reduction in the second 7 day, up to 14. So I thank you for that. But no further questions. Thanks.
Deb?
No further questions.
Okay. David?
No questions. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, Dr. Reed?
No questions, just a comment. I think that, this bar program that Sunoco does is really a great backup tool. Sounds like you have managed it well. So I just think that ought to be taken into consideration too.
Okay. So my opinion is that certainly 14 days under these circumstances would be too much, given what we've already done with the other owners that came in.
Mhm.
Also, given that the first violation was beyond when we put the new regulations into place. The question is, should it be 8 days, which means you'd have to stop sales for one more day, as I understand it? Or should it be for 9, or should it be for 10? So I'm gonna leave that up to the board members to decide. Lorenzo, do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I'd support a 2-day suspension to make
Two
it a
additional.
total of 9. Yes.
Deb, what's your feeling about that?
Well, I was thinking about staying consistent and with the 10-day suspension.
Okay, David?
I'm not in support of a reduction, but obviously the board's pleasure.
So you'd rather not reduce it at all?
Correct.
Okay, Dr. Reed?
I'm thinking more along the lines of Lorenzo.
A 9 days.
What did he say?
I think he said
Did he
9.
change it?
Yeah, he said 2 additional days. Okay, I think that probably is fair. So I would also support an additional 2-day suspension. But now we have to have someone make a motion to that effect.
Well, I'll make a motion that
Okay.
we suspend another 2 days.
Okay, so another 2 days for a total of 9.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Lorenzo seconds the motion. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll just call the roll. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
Deb, yes or no?
Yes.
David, yes or no?
No.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Myself, yes. So it's 4-1. You'll just have to refrain from selling tobacco products for another 2 consecutive days.
Thank you.
And you don't have to tell me that because you've already added to the original paperwork that we have. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. So we'll do tomorrow and then Saturday will be.
yep,
Okay, very good. Thank you.
thank you.
That was a little more complicated than I thought.
Yeah,
I start thinking about the old regulations and the new
Next week,
regulations.
but hopefully we won't see you for a while.
yeah.
It's not that we don't want to see you, but we don't want to see you.
Hi.
Okay,
Okay, hopefully next time Bob Collect goes out, it's a lot different.
I would think from what I've heard, kind of people talking, that we definitely got their attention in the, and they realized that
Yeah.
it's going to be tougher than it used to be.
Yeah, and hopefully they learn from that.
And
Okay.
we're in full conformity with even what the state said in terms of shall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everything that the board did tonight is definitely well within your limits of what you're allowed to do. I mean, that wasn't a question. I'm just hoping that our salespeople and our business owners take heed to that this is a serious situation and then they have to take, and as much as I don't want to say someone lost their job, I do think that that is appropriate. Do you know what I mean? That the couple of instances that, the people lost their job because of it, because that's how serious it really is.
And spending a lot of money to upgrade the technology is also worth consideration, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It was over
Because that
$3,000.
reduces the risk that they'll be back
Mhm.
again with another backlash,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. But,
And
I do have to reach out to Bob, just one last thing, because, I am getting more and more requests for, people want to see the reports that went well. Like they want to reward their employees for doing the right thing, not necessarily just firing the ones who did the incorrect thing. They want to like say, congratulations to you, you got caught doing the right thing,
Yeah. So
so.
that's kind of what that bar program.
Right,
he was talking
right,
about does.
right,
Get your green card.
Yeah, yeah.
sounds like soccer, yellow cards,
I
blue
know.
cards, red cards.
You're out. All right,
Football, as they say in Europe.
yes, definitely
Um,
football.
Okay, so our next item of business is actually considering the number of sales permits that are available in Plymouth.
Correct. So part of our tobacco regulations has a section called the maximum number of tobacco product sales permits. And it says at any given time, there shall be no more than 58 tobacco product sales permits issued to tobacco retail outlets located within the town of Plymouth. I'm bringing this to the board's attention because currently we have 46 licenses in the town of Plymouth. And your maximum is 58. So I'm just bringing it up for discussion to see if that's something the board might like to change.
Okay, so question comes to mind immediately, do those numbers include the tobacco permit that we actually rescinded?
Yes, we took him out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, and maybe Karen's memory or Dr. Reed's memory or David's memory, I believe when we last discussed this, we decided we wanted to set the number of tobacco permits to be one more than the number that were currently issued.
Correct.
So if it's currently 46,
Mhm.
then to conform to that, we would have to reduce the number of tobacco permits to 47.
Correct.
If we do that, and it becomes obvious that there is a demand for more permits, the board does have the authority to change it and increase it again.
Correct. At that point, whoever that retailer is would come before the board and would state their case on why they believe they should have a tobacco permit. And then the board would hear their case and then decide if they want to up the number to allow that new retailer to have a tobacco license in Plymouth.
So there's an obvious motion to be made, but first we should discuss that. So Lorenzo, what's your feeling about the tobacco permit numbers?
I think we have capacity. I think we talked about this in previous board meetings that are, that we're in alignment in reducing tobacco in general for public health reasons, right? Just reduce, whether it's underage or just use of it, right? We do have licenses. People are still able to purchase tobacco when they're 21 or older. That's a decision they need to make. But from a public health standpoint, I like the policy of moving down one more than the current. And because we removed one, that triggers a walking down of the permits. to Karen's point, if a retailer wants to start selling tobacco and has to come to the Board of Health to make their case to sell, to ask for a license, that's going to be from my standpoint, a high bar, one, but two, we're only have one available. So it's not like we're saying it's no is never, right? But it is definitely a high bar. And I like to continue on with this policy of walking down the licenses available to show, one, to the retailer public that we're serious about tobacco sales in Plymouth and reducing it for public health. So that's my soapbox standpoint.
Okay, thank you, Lorenzo. Just to clarify that, if someone comes in and there are no current available permits,
Yes,
and they request one and it's turned down because there aren't any available, they have to wait how long before they can make another request?
it doesn't say.
I thought we had a policy about that.
No.
No?
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, wait, it does. Okay. If after reviewing the application, the Board of Health votes against amending the maximum number of permits, the applicant shall not submit another application until at least 2 years after the date of that vote, unless the Board of Health votes in favor of an earlier consideration.
So my interpretation of that
That's
is that if someone came in after we did this, and assuming we increase it to 40, we decrease it to 47, there is one available.
Correct.
Okay. So if someone asked for that, what would their process be in terms of?
Absolutely nothing. We would grant them.
It would just be granted automatic.
Correct.
And then there would be no licenses,
Correct.
permits available any longer for anyone
Correct.
else unless the board changed the number.
Correct. And your discussion when we did this before did bring up, do we always want that to be a running number? Meaning, do we always want it to be +1? I mean, that's something you could consider too, that you're never going to say max out. You're always going to have that one additional on the book, so to speak. But that was something that was discussed before.
And I think the board decided to do the +1.
Yeah,
So it could be
Because-
changed. We could change it and say, okay, well, we're gonna set the maximum number at 46. That's a number that's currently outstanding. There are no others unless the board decides to grant one.
yeah, because Dr. Turkelson, who was a past member of the board, and myself, we were sort of like a little subcommittee that worked on this particular effort. And I think that he was definitely in favor of the rolling +1 all the time, but the
That
board,
defeats the purpose of what.
it does. It does.
Lorenzo.
It does, except for this, here's an example. An additional 2 liquor licenses are going to be going before town meeting on April 6th. 2 brand new liquor license. I will guarantee you, those 2 liquor licenses will probably want to sell tobacco products too. So now, there's an example where we're gonna have a situation where 2 are gonna come in and there's only gonna be 1. And I guess whoever gets here first, I guess. Or,
Yeah, so basically, although we're taking a fairly large drop under consideration now, there could be a slow, gradual up creep, right?
mhm.
So that is possible.
Keeping in mind what helps us, and we've already turned people down based upon this regulation, is the 100 feet.
Mhm.
Yeah, 500, I'm sorry, 500. You have to be 500 feet away from another location that sells tobacco. And we've already turned at least 2 that I know of, people down because they were too close.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Thanks, Barry. Karen, if I heard you correctly, you said that if there's an available license and an applicant comes in, they are automatically granted the license without going before the board. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is it within our power to say, instead of restricting the number of licenses, is it possible for us to add a step to the application process that requires the licensee applicant to come before us regardless of the number of licenses that are available?
Well, that sets a precedent, however, for the 2,635 licenses that I issue. So I think it would be difficult to say you have to come before the board under a normal circumstance to seek your license, where these other licenses don't have to come before the board. I think you either have to say all of them do or none of them do.
Why is that?
Because I think it's prejudice, to be honest with you. I think it's prejudice. You're saying to one particular group that's selling one particular product, your process is different than everyone else who's granted a license through the Division of Public Health.
But I mean, but it is different. And well, let me turn the question around then. Do we limit any other of the licenses that you issue?
No.
The select
So
board
then-
has a limit
so
on
then-
alcohol.
Yeah.
So that,
Mhm.
but hold on. Then we're already being prejudiced towards the folks who sell tobacco if we impose a restriction on the number of licenses.
Yeah, you are.
So I'm not in favor of restricting the number of licenses that we have. But if we're going to be prejudiced, wouldn't it be better instead of limiting the number of licenses to say, hey, we take this seriously. We're going to require that anyone who wants to sell tobacco in our town has to come before the duly appointed Board of Health. And not only that, they have to sell us on why it's advantageous, not just for them, but it is in the best interest of our community to allow that sale to happen. So in other words, if we're gonna impose some sort of prejudice, whether it's restricting the number of licenses or requiring them to come in front of us, isn't it better if we have some sort of public process that puts the potential licensee in front of the town's representatives?
I think that I also recall, we actually looked into when we set the 1 plus the number of existing permits. We looked into what other towns did, in terms of population density and number of tobacco permits. And I believe we're pretty high, if I remember correctly, even in terms of population density, compared to other towns that have similar populations.
No,
Don't remember that?
no, we're not high.
We're not high.
No, in fact, Margaret and I did a study when we pulled up GIS and actually looked at where they were to make sure that they weren't being in just, lower income neighborhoods or something like that. And they're not. They are literally spread out throughout the entire town.
Okay. So it gets a little more complex. Well, the one thing I'm concerned about is if a tobacco permit has been permanently revoked,
Yes.
assuming that there is still 1 plus the number that's outstanding, does that mean that a different owner of the same business or changing the name of the business with the same owner could then come in and say, okay, I'm here to claim the one additional license that's still not outstanding? Then what happens?
That owner cannot claim it. That owner can sell his business and the new owner can come before the board and request to have a tobacco license to be active in that location.
And that would be issued directly by the Department of Public Works, actually.
No, in the case of a revocation, you have to hear it.
Okay,
Mhm.
because that would concern me, that someone could buy the
Mhm.
business and could come in and say, I'm claiming the
Mhm.
one available license.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we have all the information if we can keep our brains straight on this. I know. It gets hard. So, Lorenzo, you've already spoken what you thought. Deb?
If a license is revoked and it gets thrown back into the mix, right? So somebody else not buying that same business of the revoked license, but somebody else can get that license, right? It gets thrown back into the mix of,
We didn't, for my number where we said, the number that I gave you, it's not including the one that was revoked. So we have 46 licenses.
And we have a max of 58 right now, right?
Currently, yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Which is a big number.
yeah, I
It is a
agree. Big number, yeah.
Yeah.
So the one that was revoked is not in that 46,
Correct.
but it could be the +1.
No.
No, because there's
Because-
12 extras already. Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess before we start getting into what could happen with the different scenarios, would probably have to say what number you want, and then we can
Mhm.
start talking about what ifs. I
Right.
think we could talk about what
Okay.
ifs for a long time, but I think what's more topical is actually saying what number do you want to have it be? Like, what do you want your maximum to be?
can I just ask, how long have the 12 been free?
We recently lost 1, 2, 3, 4. We recently lost 5
Okay,
because they chose not to renew. So they went back in the pool.
And as I remember, White House Beach is planning to sell the business.
Yes, but we don't know what that's going to
We
be,
don't know.
and we don't know what's going to be.
Or when,
Yeah, or when.
and they paid,
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
so I think David already spoke about Dr. Reed.
I think we should take the opportunity that we have here, the 46, and say 46 plus 1. I mean, we're not harming anybody by doing it, and our goal is to the health of the community, decrease these numbers.
Mhm.
I agree with Dr. Reed. So I think I would support 46 plus 1 would be 47 as a maximum number unless the board takes further action.
Okay.
Could I have a follow-up, Barry?
Sure, go ahead.
So Karen, if we have 47 licenses, someone comes in, gets that 47th,
Mm-hmm.
is the suggestion then that we are now at 48 licenses? Or,
No, you are
Okay.
now maxed. You have
Right.
hit, you have hit the maximum. Now, if anyone comes into into the department and says, hey, I'm opening up Karen's Snack Shack and I want to sell tobacco, they'll have to come before the board and request that that number be increased.
and that's exactly what my point was going to be. So in effect, we're doing what I said. So why don't we just require every new licensee to come before us?
No, it's not the same.
It's
Rather
not
than
the same.
restricting the number, it is the same.
No, it's not the same for that one. For that one, for that plus 1, it's
Right,
not
so
the same.
we're only doing it one time. We're gonna let
Yes.
someone come and say,
Yes.
all right, you're automatically gonna get your license as long as you meet their
Correct.
criteria. But
Correct.
then from number 2 on, they're all gonna have to come before us.
Correct, unless that maximum number's changed.
So
I
what I'm
think David,
saying is actually more stringent. I'm saying that number 47 should have to come before us. And that any new licensee, I'm not talking about for renewals. For renewals, as long as they're meeting their requirements, I don't think they need to come before us. But if we want to be serious about tobacco sales, why don't we just make everyone come in front of us? Because it's going to happen after number 47. Every other person comes before us. So whether we have 47 licenses or unlimited number of licenses, once that next license is taken, everyone has to come before us. So I'd say, why don't we just change the policy so that everyone has to come before us, including that 47?
and my understanding, David,
So
is
don't make a
that,
limit then.
we haven't changed the number of licenses for I don't know how long. It's been 58. Before that, it was higher. 60,
There's 61.
Mhm.
And the board voted to change it to 58, obviously. Right?
Yeah, well, that's what it was down to. It went from 61 down to 58.
So assuming somebody takes the available license, which is number 47, the maximum number stays at 47 until such time as the board votes to use the +1 and add a new license to the availability. So that means, if that's true, then that means that as soon as somebody takes license number 47, unless the board changes the number everyone has to come before the board in order to get a license, and the board would first have to increase the number. So basically, David, it's doing sort of like what you're saying, except it gets around the idea that, you know, the tobacco licenses were going to never be given out independently by the department without the Board of Health's consulting. Anyway, I think I understand it now. If there's, I guess to have further discussion, somebody should make a motion. So the motion could be either we will limit the number of tobacco licenses to 46.
Lorenzo has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Lorenzo. You want to wait until after we make a motion?
No,
Otherwise-
I wanted to, you know, kind of expand on the discussion that David mentioned, you know, to go in front of the board. So given this current structure of the regulation, if we were, and this discussion was triggered because of a rescission of a license, right? If there was just fines, we would still continue to have 58 licenses. We wouldn't even be talking about this. But since there was a rescission of a license, it triggered this discussion. We should reduce it, or the question of reducing it. So given the structure of the regulation, if we make the maximum permit 46, the next, going forward, it would go in front of the board for any new licenses, which is ultimately what I think David would like, is to see anything come in front of the board and have that discussion with the requester.
Well, and nothing is ever as simple as that. Because what could happen is that in the midst of all this, someone else could turn in a license voluntarily.
Yeah.
Now that license is going to be available,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So under those circumstances, they don't have to come before the board.
Right.
And so theoretically, if one of the permit holders next week said, I'm gonna turn in my license, we now have 2 available. 46 plus 1 turned in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless the board took action to either reduce it further or to increase it.
And 46 is actually 47. Sorry, we added wrong.
Okay. So 47 is the
Yes,
current number.
47 is the current number.
Okay.
That's it. It's all over. It's over. No one gets one. Actually,
So it's 47, but it's set at 58 until we do
it
something.
is still 58
Okay.
on the books.
So the
58.
question in my mind now becomes, do we leave it at 47 or do we actually make one more available pending whatever happens with other resistance license holders? So it could be 47 plus 1 is 48. It could be 47. I think those are the only choices.
Well, and the other choice is that we don't reduce it all.
Oh, that you keep it at 58? I don't think that's.
Correct.
Yeah, well, what David's saying is that is a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a choice.
yeah, I know.
Also, in the state surveyed our tobacco policies along with a bunch of other stuff, there was a checkoff boxes I remember. And one was, we do restrict the total number of tobacco licenses.
Mm-hmm.
So the state obviously was implying that they expect boards of health to actually do something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we were one of the first towns when we actually did start talking about the maximum to actually implement it.
Yeah.
You know, and the 500 feet. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 huge steps towards limiting the availability of tobacco products in Plymouth.
So I think the appropriate motion at this point, if someone wishes to make it, is either to set the maximum number at 47, or
Mhm.
say, well, we're still gonna do the +1, so it would be 48. I think those are the two possibilities. Unless you don't want to do anything, in which case it stays at 58.
And if we set it at 47, anybody else will have to come before us.
Unless somebody, in the meantime, turns in another
Unless
license.
something goes back in the bank. Mhm.
Confusing, but I think the policy, as long as the policy is clear to the people in the office.
Yeah, as long as we know the number,
Right.
you know, as long as we know what the maximum number is that you folks wanna have.
Then I'll make a motion to set it at 47.
Okay. Is there a second to Dr. Reed's motion to set the maximum number of permits at 47?
Seconded.
Okay, is there any further discussion about changing it so that it is now reduced from 58 to 47? Further discussion? Crickets again, crickets don't vote. So I will call the roll. Lorenzo,
Yes.
motion is to reduce it to 47.
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
David,
No.
Dr. Reed,
Yes,
myself, yes.
Okay, so what will happen now is, we'll update the regulation. And then I'll bring it back to the next meeting, so we'll have to put it back on the agenda, because you'll have to, actually sort of like see it in writing and then, and take a formal vote. So we'll change 58 to 47.
And in the interim, if anybody decides they want a tobacco permit, there are none available unless someone else turns in their permit.
Right.
if they want one, you have to come see us.
And we have to change the number again.
If you want to, or you could
If you
say
want
no.
to.
Yeah, you could say no,
Yeah.
you can't.
Or if no one makes a motion to do anything, then it stays the way it was.
And that's, and I guess we have to hope, and let's hope this does happen, that people who are building things in Plymouth realize that they have to come before the board to discuss this. So we'll have to probably make a little, we'll work with the inspectional services department to make sure that people who are putting in a zoning application for anything that has to do with like a general store or a new gas station or something, that it'll be triggered for us to take a look at that to see if they're gonna be requesting a tobacco license, and to let them know as well that what our regulations are, and to see how close they are to anything else.
So if they come in and ask for a tobacco permit, and there are currently none available, then the board either has to increase the number so they can get one, or they have to wait until one is turned in.
Right, they can request a hearing before the board, you can hear them state their case of why they should have one. You could decide no, when everything stays the way it is, or you could say yes. And then at the same time, you'll have to make a vote to move 47 to 48.
David, go ahead.
Yeah,
Is this
thanks,
clear
Mary.
to you? Is this clear?
yeah.
I mean, it's.
I'm not clear at all. I'm curious, Karen. I heard you say this is a change to the regulation. Do we specify the number of licenses available in the regulation?
You do,
Doesn't that mean then that this is a regulation change and therefore we need to have had a public hearing in order to make this change?
isn't this what this is?
It's already 58. We're changing it
Yeah,
to
But this is
47.
not a public hearing. It was not advertised as a public hearing. It wasn't advertised. It was only given the 48-hour, or, I don't know exactly when the agenda posted, but don't we normally do a 2-week advertisement period for a public hearing?
why would a change in the number require a public hearing?
If it's a
The regu-
change
the
to
reg-
if
the
it's a change
regulation
to a
already-
regulation.
The regulation already exists. We've changed other regulations in detail and details without having a public hearing. This is a change in a detail. This isn't a change in the regulation. There still exists. The regulation is that what exists is a maximum number of licenses. That still exists today as it did 5 seconds ago. It's the number that's changing.
I'll defer to you, but I was under the impression that when we changed regulations, we needed to have a public hearing.
I will definitely check with council, and if that's true, we can definitely go through the process again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ooh.
So we'll check with council on that.
So next item of business is going to be director's report.
Okay. All right, so, interesting news coming from the Department of, Public Health. COVID-19 has now been classified as a respiratory illness. Similar to RSV, the flu. So the guidelines have changed. There's no such thing anymore as isolation or quarantine. You should stay home if you feel sick. If you start to feel better, you can, and you've not had a fever for 24 hours, you can resume your normal activities. Now, the difference here is that if you have tested positive for, and they say respiratory virus, it's no longer just specifically mentioning COVID-19. It is a respiratory virus, but you don't have any symptoms. You should take extra precaution. You should avoid crowded indoor spaces. You should wash your hands with soap and water, which we've said from the very beginning. Avoid spending time with people who could be at increased risk for disease. And then if you develop, now this is if you don't have any symptoms, if you develop symptoms, then you should stay home. But there's no isolation protocol any longer that said you had to be home for days 1 to 5, and then days 6 to 10, you had to wear a mask. There's no quarantining if you've been a close contact. Close contacts have been gone for a while. But this is really the step where we take COVID-19 and we put it as an endemic, and it's part of other respiratory illnesses as well. So that's a change for us here in Massachusetts. This is the CDC guidelines that came out a couple of weeks ago, but Massachusetts had not adopted them when we first started talking about it, but they have adopted them now. So this has been, we'll be posting this on our website so that people know what the guidelines are, but basically it's if you're sick, stay home. Don't go into crowds. Don't be around people who might already be compromised, so they might be catching your respiratory disease quicker than others. People at increased risk include older adults, individuals with chronic underlying medical conditions, for example, heart, lung, liver, or kidney disease, young children, especially those under 2, people with weakened immune systems, people with disabilities, and pregnant people. So those are some of the changes that were announced today for the updated respiratory illness recommendations for the general public. Just also want to include again, the household hazardous waste collection. This is coming up more and more about when people go to the transfer station and they don't know what to do with certain things. And there's a list on our website that says, what do I do with? And then some of the items actually refer to household hazardous waste collection days. So ours in Plymouth is April 20th. But Plymouth has a program with the other towns as well. So as long as you show your license, you can go to the other towns that are also listed for spring 2024. And the days that are listed, the times are 9 AM to 1 PM. And that's all I wanted to talk about today.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone have questions for Karen about her director's report? I see no hands, I hear no voices. So I did notice, looking down at who was actually in attendance, that we have Ace Madrigal from the intermediate school,
I think PCIS.
PCIS, and we also have Addison,
Addison's
who's
here.
with us from the Plymouth North High School.
Yeah.
So could you admit both of those if they're not already admitted? Very?
Yeah.
So Addison, I'll ask you first, do you have anything you'd like to bring to the attention of the Board of Health?
No, but I did like talking about the COVID. There has been like a lot of COVID cases I've been hearing about at school. And just a lot of people, just the common sickness going around like crazy. And actually conjunctivitis has been going around like huge amounts. I had it for like a week and a half. It was gross. But that's really it.
Okay. Dr. Reed, while we have,
That's very interesting.
while we have our students, do you have any questions?
I can't think of any.
Okay. And then Ace, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I don't have any concerns really. I don't know about the middle schools. Nothing has really been going around lately. I don't really have anything to say.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you for joining us, though.
A lot of this is about making sure we have students involved, so we want to give you a chance to be involved. Obviously, a lot of what we're discussing about tobacco sales directly involves our students. So I would hope that, you would probably, with some of your fellow classmates, hope relate to them what goes on at Board of Health meetings. And that how important it is that everyone have some knowledge about what's going on in the Board of Health. So anyway, thank you both for coming. Chairperson's reports. I wanted to mention that there was a CHES webinar today, which is Community Health Equity Survey. And that both Linda and I were zoomed into that. There was a lot of discussion about it. Didn't really get time to bring up what we had already done, so I wanted to summarize what's going on in the North Plymouth Advisory Committee group. So for those who are not aware, we have members of that group from the North Plymouth area. It includes people from Harbor Health. It includes food pantry people. It includes, I think, 2 members from nurses from the elementary schools in the area.
Algonquin Heights.
And there's the, I guess, the manager or the director or supervisor of the Algonquin Heights
Director of Housing.
group. So, and yes, we have a St. Mary's Church representative. So what happened at the last meeting was, it was announced that St. Mary's Church pastor has not only agreed, but been enthusiastic to allow us to utilize the St. Mary's Parish Center for what had been proposed to be a distribution of fresh produce. So the next things we have to do is to make sure that we have a source and we have volunteers to do it. And it is designated for being done, I think, on Friday afternoons, although not necessarily every Friday afternoon, but that's when it is available for us to use. So that came up. There was further discussion about dental health and dental checkups for the students in the schools, but it really applies to everybody that hasn't had regular dental checkups. There is a SMILES program that the students know well, I assume, that is already in place in the schools. But there are obviously, and the SMILES program can do fillings in addition to checkups and cleanings. But Harbor Health announced that they now have on staff an oral surgeon, which could be made available. And there was a process involving interaction between Harbor Health officials and the school nurses, so that if anything comes up involving the students at those schools, and it could expand to other schools, that they would be notified if Harbor Health has a cancellation and one of the students could be seen. So that brings up the problem of how did they get there? And so I went before the Plymouth Rotary Club, and I explained the situation at the Rotary Club. And they told me that, yes, they have money, but this money they use for a lot of different purposes. And that if we wish them to consider giving money for transport of students to medical or dental care, that we would have to write it in form of a letter which specifies a specific amount of money. They would then take it before their finance committee, and if it was approved, they would provide the money in a block grant to whoever needs to use the money for purposes that was described. In this case, I guess it would be the school nurses. And possibly Algonquin Heights. I don't even know how far it could extend. So that came up. The other thing I wanted to mention about the Public Health Excellence Grant is, thank goodness, after a long, long wish list and struggle, we have on the hook, I hope, a brand new full-time epidemiologist who impressed all the members of the committee, very much so.
Yep.
She is from New Jersey, but she has a very close friend who lives on Evergreen Street in Kingston, which is where she came to our meeting from.
Yeah, she came in person.
So she basically
Yeah.
walked to our meeting.
Yeah.
And she is very enthusiastic, and the real pluses for her was she was very personable, has a lot of enthusiasm, and even had looked into all the details of the Public Health Excellence Grant and all the.
And the blueprints.
And all the
Read
blueprint for success,
Yeah,
which came out of the Public Health Department.
yeah,
No one else had done that.
no, no,
So this is somebody that is really, top notch.
very talented in social media. She's won awards for social media, which is way of the future, and we're gonna have to do it. And she's bilingual.
Yep. And she does have a degree in epidemiology, which she
Mhm.
got actually in Sweden.
Yes, yeah,
And when I mentioned that to people from the public, from the Department of Public Health, they said, "Oh, the Karolinska Institute." I was like, yeah, it was.
it was, yeah.
I said, "Oh, that is a
Yeah.
really good place to be trained."
No kidding.
Yeah, that's where the Nobel Peace Prize for Medicine comes from.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in the hopes, because we're now in the process of having human resources here at Plymouth check her references.
Yeah,
But she has already been notified in writing today, I believe,
you are correct. Yeah,
that the committee decided that she was our first choice and that she would be receiving a job offer contingent upon satisfactory, references being contacted.
And she wants to move here, I assume.
yes,
She
Yes.
sounded very enthusiastic over it.
Yes.
She's already got a real close friend here.
Yeah.
I think she described her as her closest friend ever.
yes, and she's definitely a traveler. I mean, she's been in Sweden, she's been in Spain.
Yeah.
So she loves this area. She wanted to come to New England. That was her next plan of where she wanted to be for a while, so. Yeah,
And she speaks Spanish quite fluently, apparently.
yeah, and it was nice because there are 6 towns in our collaborative. For the Public Health Excellence Grant, and so. Dr. Poffin said, how about everyone like writes down like basically the number 1 and the number 2, and it was unanimous.
Wow.
Yeah,
And the number 2 was almost unanimous.
yeah, the number 2 was almost unanimous, but number 1 was unanimous.
The number 2 was a student who is currently at UMass Lowell getting her degree in public health and epidemiology. And she's not available for
We had,
full-time
yeah, we
employment.
had, it was really exciting to talk to these candidates. We had 5 that we interviewed, and I would have been pleased with any of them. I mean, I'm thrilled with the one that we selected if she, if everything works out and she formally accepts. But it was really exciting to hear from all of them and their background and what their interests were and how excited they were to actually be here and do what we were requesting them to do for the group.
And work as part of our group, because I think one of the attractions is that there's a lot of variety.
Yeah.
Because it's 6 different towns.
Oh, yeah, you're not gonna be bored.
Six different sets of problems that might have to be solved by an epidemiologist.
Different demographics.
And also, it was obvious that someone doing that kind of work would be interacting directly with our nurse. Hopefully soon to be nurses, plural.
You have another one coming.
We're hoping for one.
Yeah.
And also probably be interacting in some way, at least the nurses would be interacting with a community outreach specialist. So that's where we are with that, and it's been a successful, difficult, in ways frustrating, but very worthwhile endeavor, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Grant people will be happy.
Yeah, yes.
Being accomplished.
Well, I mean, I will pat Dr. Poffin on the back because he does a lot of work, but our collaborative is being recognized by the state for a collaborative that's really doing what the goal was for the collaboratives to be. Yeah, and we're really, and Dr. Poppins kicked butt. I mean, he's just doing such a great job. But it is a great group. I mean, the 6 towns are really working well together. We had ideas, we brainstormed, we worked hard, we hired people. The people are already on the ground doing what they need to do. And the important thing is we're bringing services to residents that may not have received these services due to budget restraints for those 6 towns. So I think that is a win.
Of which there are many financial constraints.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
And, it's well known at this point that for the most part, the towns in the Commonwealth and the cities probably underfund their public health programs.
Yeah.
And they're also understaffed.
That's not a
The chances that will change anytime soon is
Yeah.
probably slim, but in the meantime, we got this $500,000 a year.
We do.
To sort of
Yeah,
push everything up
Yeah.
and meet the state standards and provide missing services and do it properly through the state. So I think we're all pleased with what we've done and we're pleased with what we're going to try to do.
definitely. Yeah,
So-
and happy Public Health Week, first week in April, everyone remember.
And I don't want to mention this in any detail, but I did send out the text of something that was meant to be an award. And I wondered if anyone I've heard back from, I think, Lorenzo and from Dr. Reed and from Karen. If anyone has any additional changes, please send them to me within the next week. I will be away from Friday through next Friday in Las Vegas. It is another long plane flight.
It is.
That is a long plane.
And I don't gamble and neither does Ann.
Oh, okay.
We have plenty of other things to do.
I know.
So Dr. Reed has agreed to do the agenda meeting in my absence for next week. Things for the agenda for next week, is obviously up to everyone. Things that pop into my brain is I guess we have to go through the written text of the change in tobacco sales permits.
Yep, I'll talk to council, about
And I
that.
think there was a promise made to people who are concerned about, rat control.
Yes, we would like to hear, yes, there are, a group that would like to talk to us and also a pest control company would like to talk to us about, using, rodenticide to kill, rodents in Plymouth. Anyway, so that's gonna be on the agenda for April 10th.
Just so everyone knows, according to state and federal law, we cannot change the use of those compounds, or for that matter, any kind of herbicide or pesticide, except in town-owned properties. Yep. So we don't have any power to change it for private use. Unless the state changes the law. I can't think of anything else. I think you had something else you wanted to do eventually, right, Karen?
The only thing I had on was, the horse regs, we have to do that, yes. We've talked about it, we have to just vote on it. That we don't want, the horse regs say that you have to have a posting in the newspaper for 14 days. There's no newspaper, so I just wanna say that it has to be advertised for 14 days and have it be on the website or social media or something, because to have this person who wants a stable license pay that kind of money for a newspaper that basically doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, it's so thin and no one, I don't think it's serving its purpose. I don't think the readership level is enough to warrant why that was required to begin with.
Yeah.
It's to let the public know that it's happening. So I think we need to do it differently.
So this is just a shopping list for the agenda.
Okay.
I can't
Yeah,
discuss any of it because it's gonna be an agenda.
that's right.
And I will be back, hopefully well-rested and raring to go and totally out of control.
Well, have a wonderful time.
No, I won't be rich. I did want to, also thank everybody, for these long, lengthy tobacco violation appeals. We have certainly shown great attention to detail.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also be known that since I was appointed by the board to go to the NDCAP meetings, I did. I was asked by Henrietta, who is the sole appointee by the select board to represent the town of Plymouth citizens, to substitute for her while she was out of the country. I went. And immediately after the chair said, according to the regulations, that as I read them, you should be able to do so. Another member of the panel said, I object. They took a vote and I was excluded
We're
from
talking about-
participating as a member of the panel until the Attorney General of the state rules otherwise.
Yes. It's
So
unfortunate.
in response to that, I did inquire as to how I get
Mhm.
on a volunteer basis to fill the remaining opening that the select board has to appoint.
Oh, there you go. Very good.
So that's in the works too, so,
Do you want to talk about the study that they're gonna do?
there is a study that is ongoing, and they're looking for volunteers to have their vacuum cleaner dust or their HVAC filter dust collected so that the, people at the Department of Public Health who have a grant to do this at Harvard University can assess how much radioactivity is present in the dust.
Whoa.
And it can only be done for homes that are within 10 miles of the plant.
Okay.
It has to be a home where no one smokes.
Mhm.
And it has to also, it's clarified, it also has to be not a newly constructed home.
Okay.
Because newly constructed homes, what happens in Pine Hills, are heavily insulated and they haven't been around the plant for very long.
Okay.
At the moment, I think there are 5 or 6 people that have volunteered from either Priscilla or White House Beach. And the number is growing,
Mhm.
and Nancy Gantz just volunteered at my urging to volunteer her house to also be part of it.
Mhm.
Terry, isn't there like a White Horse Beach Facebook group or something?
There's a White Horse Beach Association, there's
Yeah.
a Priscilla Beach Association too.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something that could be like posted on the social media, you know,
Yeah,
that way, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in that area would be just to be made aware of it.
well, I can post it on the Priscilla Beach, that's where I live, so.
Yeah, that might be a good idea to
So
do.
they're looking for at least 10 for the initial study and up to 30 total. And they said this is not going to be something that is only done in Plymouth. This is going to be done in other areas, including the area up near the Seabrook nuclear plant, which probably will eventually also be decommissioned. And there was somebody from Amesbury at the NDCAP meeting, who had quite a long discussion with me as well. So that's an ongoing struggle. But as I was charged to represent the Board of Health, I have represented the Board of Health, even if I'm restricted to speaking for only 3 minutes.
Yes, you have.
To the best of my ability.
I was gonna say.
You have.
So that's that. Is there any other new or old business anyone wishes to bring up? Deb? No. Lorenzo?
No.
No. David?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Reed?
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot. And so all I need now at 10 minutes, 11 minutes before 6, is someone to make a motion to adjourn.
I see.
Is there a second?
Second,
I think it was Lorenzo.
yes.
I'll call the roll. Deb, yes or no?
Yes.
Lorenzo?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Myself, yes. It's unanimous and the meeting is adjourned.